Hello. Our first talk will be on the terminology of music and of rhythm. And first we'll focus on some of the terminology we're more familiar with in terms of melody. And this has to do with words that end in phony, F-O-N-Y, like monophony, homophony, and polyphony. These come from the root word phone, which is a Greek word that means sound or voice. And telephone is from that Greek word sound, sound over wires or whatever. And so, what is monophony? What is homophony and polyphony? Well, if we're in the shower singing a song, we're singing one melodic voice, right? So that's monophony, one voice. How about homophony? Homophony. This is like singing a hymn in church or in a choir where you have a series of just quarter notes or simple rhythmic texture going along. The melody is in the soprano, and the alto, tenor, and bass are singing harmony tones to set the harmony of the melodic line. But it's one melodic line, and so that would be called monophony or homophony, because you've got the harmonic notes, the different, bringing out the harmony that you're singing, the triads and the harmonies, but still one voice moving along with just color. The tenor, alto, and bass are providing color to the melody, but it's one melodic voice. So polyphony, polyphony, is where there's more than one independent melodic voice. And we can find these in two circumstances. And let me make sure that I don't get shut out here. Okay. One is called counter melody, and we'll hear that in piano music of the good composers, Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms, Chopin, Debussy, where we'll have a primary melody and then a counter melody, a lovely counter melody that interacts with and complements the main melody. And so that's called a counter melody, and that's a good example of polyphony. It's a simple polyphony with two voices. Then we get to Bach, don't we? With Bach, with his fugues and his counterpoint and his contrapuntal texture, with not just two, but sometimes three and four melodic voices going on at the same time. And there's some really complicated polyphony where they try to get five voices going at the same time. Some of the most brilliant composers have been able to do that. Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. But that really gets pretty complicated. So polyphony, more than one voice. Now how about in rhythm? I think in rhythm there's three terms that we hear a lot that could use some clarification. Syncopation, cross rhythm, and polyrhythm. Let's talk about each one. Let me make sure here. I have to click my pages once in a while to make sure I don't get shut off here. Sorry about that. Okay, syncopation, what is that? I think the incorrect thought of it is that it means a rhythmic texture that has a lot of offbeats and tied 16th notes across the bar line and stuff. Syncopation has much more to do with the unexpected rhythm or the irregular rhythm. Whatever our texture might be, that our groove that we're into, and we're flowing along with it, and we're used to it, we're expecting it, it's our groove. Whether it's a series of quarter notes or a more lively and complicated series of offbeats and 16ths tied across the downbeat or whatever. If it's part of our established groove and we're used to it, then we wouldn't call it syncopation. We would call a syncopation the unexpected event, the irregular rhythmic event that we're not expecting. And we need to be ready for it and prepared to play it, or we'll miss it. And we see that come up in music frequently. So then, okay, syncopation. the unexpected rhythmic event, the irregular event. Now, how about cross rhythm? Well, really, that's very similar to counter melody. It's a secondary, or even then a third, a tertiary rhythm that is complementary to the main rhythm. It intertwines with it. It complements it. And so this is cross rhythm. And this is common in African music. We do find some of it in classical music, but not a lot. We find more of it in jazz, but we find a lot of it in African music and in world music. Now, how about polyrhythm? This is where African music really goes off into its own area of great development that European traditions really haven't gone that direction. So it's really, to me, an expression of the African mind in its own genius. I don't think it's been recognized yet so much, but I'm sure it will as time goes on. Polyrhythm has to do with the streams of different rhythmic feels going on at the same time. It's not just counter rhythm. Say we're in 4/4 meter, and we've got a contrasting rhythms going on, one rhythm contrasting to the other within the 4/4. This has to do more with a stream that feels like a 3 going along with a stream that feels like a 2. And we do experience that in Western music. Just that basic 3 against 2 feel has been used by many composers, Mozart, Chopin, Brahms, and I have a Rachmaninoff example lined up here that we can listen to. But basically the idea is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got the 2 streams at the same time, the 4 and the 2, or the 3, or the 2 against 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And why don't we jump right in now to our example of the 3 against 2, which is what we find really the only manifestation of polyrhythm that I've been able to find in Western music or in European music, is this 3 against 2. And here's a lovely example by Rachmaninoff, Piano Concerto No. 2, the Adagio sostenuto, or Andante sostenuto. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. I'm going to play it now. Here we go. The triplets are accompaniment, and the melody is duplets. You can hear the triplets in the accompaniment and the duplets playing the melody. Hear those triplets in the clarinets? The triplets with the duplet. Okay. So that's a lovely example of polyphony in Western music. But that's as far as it goes, really, in Western music, is the simple 3 against 2 form. We do have some modern Western composers who are trying to get into polyphony, and they go into an area that Professor Ladzepo at Cal really felt was a mistaken concept, and that is polymeter, where you on the same score, you have some instruments playing in 6/4, some in 12/8, some in 3/4. It gets quite confusing, and Professor Ladzepo really stressed the idea that polyrhythm comes from a music culture that is dance-oriented, where you've got people dancing and feeling a strong sense of downbeat in their body, so that rhythms that crash against the downbeat or that really contrast strongly from the primaries are absorbed and enjoyed by the body, because the body is really so strongly integrated with the downbeat. And so it's a unique form. It really takes off where the European forms haven't really gone that direction. And I think it's logical to think about that in Northern Europe, where the snow's on the ground and the people are inside looking out the window and looking for ways to find solace and joy and creative expression. It's more intellectual, more toward the mind and the feelings and so forth, I think. And then we have Africa, where it's beautiful, and people are out enjoying the world, and dance is so frequent and so common, and everyone is loving to dance. And so that music is taking on that element of joyful dance and rhythmic exploration, and feeling the beautiful contrasts of rhythm that make dance so joyful. And that can only really be appreciated and enjoyed while dancing, because without the dance and the strong sense of the downbeat, then we can't enjoy it. It takes off into another orbit of its own. So I think that's the fundamental of the contrast between the Western or European and the African, and what makes African polyrhythm so exciting. Okay, so that's it for this first installment, and then we're going to go in now into polyrhythm and counter rhythm, cross rhythm, and start to learn about it more from what I know of it. Okay, well, thanks a lot. We'll see you.